See, we did it, Doug. You don't come out and you don't buck the system. No matter what the reason is, you just can basically keep your mouth shut.
The high price one cop is paying for telling the truth.
If your daughter was kidnapped and raped because the negligence and incompetence of detectives the year before, when the suspect should have been caught, how would you feel? How would you feel if it was your mother who was stabbed 68 times as cops stood out her apartment door, heard her screams, wanted to go in to save her life, and were told to stand down by their sergeant and wait for SWAT? How would you feel if it was your mother who was murdered? How would you feel if your daughter was murdered, an unsolved murder to this day, so the crime scene was cleared by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, your colleagues, you went in the apartment and stepped in the same bloody carpet in the room where your daughter was killed, and you found evidence that was left behind by the detectives, crime scene analysts, whoever, that should have been sealed, tagged, and taken out of that apartment? How would you feel? If nobody likes the way I conduct these investigations, well, then conduct your own investigations and do your own podcast. I did plenty of stories on the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department praising the police officers for years, even on my podcast. The hero cop who basically told him to shove it because he wasn't going to falsify police reports like they were ordered to do to downgrade violent crimes. He's basically said, shove it. And I did podcasts on that. And then what did Lombardo do as sheriff? He sent Andrew Walsh, who was the assistant sheriff at the time, I understand, to harass the guy. You dug Poppa's sauce and all this type of stuff. They should be more worried about the cover-ups and the bullshit that they do about harassing cops because they think people are talking. People are going to talk as long as you keep doing the stupid shit that you've been doing for years like every other sheriff. And I mean you too, Kevin Pervert McMahill. From Monday, May 27th, 2024, with another exclusive breaking news story. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department police officers harassed, provoked citizens, violated civil rights, and made false arrests on the Las Vegas Strip, according to police sources who spoke to the Doug Poppa podcast. The allegations I'm about to discuss here are stunning. This illegal police operation involved plainclothes and uniformed cops working out of the Convention Center Area Command under the direction of Squad Supervisor Sergeant Kevin Meenan, spelled M-E-N-O-N. And sources are telling me that, had I not broke that story, they're not too sure that it would have turned out the way it did with Meenan being arrested, meaning that they're insinuating that there would have been another cover-up and nobody would have known about it. But I broke the story May 27th, and now everybody knows about it. The leadership of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for decades are corrupt. They engage in affairs, the sheriffs, with female subordinates. Some of them are notorious drunks. This is the document that I released in the previous podcast. Those are the results of the internal affairs investigation against then police officer Kevin McMahill in 1995. The Internal Affairs Bureau investigation sustained the charges of conduct unbecoming an officer and neglect of duty, and also untruthfulness during the investigation. He was sustained for untruthfulness. Okay? When I talked about the Giglio-Brady list, and that is a list compiled usually by a prosecutor's office or a police department containing the names and details of law enforcement officers who have had sustained incidents of either untruthfulness, criminal convictions, candor issues, or some other type of issue placing their credibility into question. And we know from the internal affairs investigation that I just had on the screen here again, the charges of untruthfulness was sustained against Kevin McMahill. So he is a documented liar, then throughout his 30-year police career, and he will be a documented liar. His credibility is in question if he's elected sheriff. The current sheriff, Kevin McMahill, who was a documented liar and documented pervert per a 1995 Internal Affairs Bureau investigation. He should have been charged in 1995 with oppression, but he had a guardian angel. If I was running for sheriff and I was elected, and Kevin McMahill was the undersheriff when I took over, I would have fired him. He's a disgrace to the police department. Me and my team work hard with sources to get this information and do these investigations, and I told you who my team is. 3 people. Me, myself, and I. I don't work for a newspaper. I don't work for a radio station, a television station. I am one guy that for years has been breaking one story after another. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and the BS that's been going on in there with Sheriff Lombardo and Kevin McMahill's cover-ups. Why can't we have a transparent department and honest cops demanding integrity and tough love instead of weird shit going on all the time? No department is perfect, but we have some seriously questionable management. Good thing Poppa tells us what's going on. I get a lot of these comments like this from people because I've been breaking stories, like I said the other day, on the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for years. Stories that the local media don't break. Sometimes once Metro will come out and put a bulletin out about somebody was arrested, then they'll do a story, usually that I published based on my sources, sometimes months before. And then other stories, other investigations that I've done, folks, that are never touched by the local media. Sidney Land and Nehemiah Kaufman were brutally murdered October 27th of 2016. Their bodies were found in Sidney's apartment, where she was living there with her boyfriend, Nehemiah Kaufman. These murders are unsolved. Nobody's been brought to justice. There's allegations of police corruption, incompetence, a cover-up, negligence. White things were covered up. They botched the crime scene. They failed to take the bullet out of Nehemiah Kaufman's mother's house on October 8th when Shane Valentine fired into the house. Steve Land, Sidney's father, after the crime scene of the double homicide was cleared by the Las Vegas Metro Police, he went back in there to retrieve some of her belongings, and he found evidence left behind by the police. This whole case is a disgrace. Listen, this is a pretty disturbing story. When I see these things of police officers not doing their job correctly, it gets to me, especially when it has anything to do with anybody messing, a sexually assaulting, child molester, groper, same thing, sexual predator, and that's the story for today. And this is another exclusive news story. The topic today is Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department police officer failed to nab alleged child sexual predator. According to my police sources, about 2 weeks ago, a child was on an aircraft flight to Las Vegas. The child was groped on the aircraft by a passenger. It was witnessed by other passengers who reported to the flight crew. From what I was told, that prompted the flight crew to make a notification while the aircraft was in the air to the police prior to the aircraft landing. I was told that when the aircraft landed, the primary responding officer from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's Airport Bureau at Harry Reid International Airport, formerly McCarran Airport out here in Las Vegas, went to interview the victim, and this primary police officer was informed by the passengers of the suspect's description, and he relayed that over the radio, from what I was told, the suspect's description to Las Vegas Metro Police Officer Diego Gutierrez, a P number 3899. According to what I was told, Officer Gutierrez just blew the call off, didn't do anything, which led to the suspect walking away without police intervention. Airport Bureau Sergeant, from what I was told, Eric Gallegos, Gallegos, wrote up Gutierrez on what's called a contact report, which basically I believe is like a preliminary disciplinary action form, allowed a alleged child sexual predator to walk because he didn't do his job. They knew that this officer at the airport wasn't doing his job for months. Ladies and gentlemen, this report that I'm sure Sheriff Joe Lombardo never would want the public to see, I got it through the pipeline, and I acquired it. It's exclusive to my podcast. What it shows me is what the hell's going on at the airport. Because if this sergeant obviously was aware of this, and this write-up came after this incident that he didn't do his job, like I said, and allowed the scumbag to walk free, child groper, predator, okay? Why didn't somebody do something with this guy prior to something happening? Like, what were they waiting for? Like this incident where a child predator walked, or maybe somebody gets killed at the airport or hurt because this guy's not doing his job, so they don't do anything, and then they only do it after that incident happened? You know the problem I got with this? Let me ask Joe Lombardo, the coward that doesn't want me to interview him like Kevin McMahill, okay? No balls, no guts, because they know I'm going to ask them questions that the media out here does not ask them, and information I receive from my sources. So Sheriff Joe Lombardo, let me ask you this question. How is it that this guy was working at the airport for months and obviously was a slug, for lack of a better words, for whatever reason? This guy's inaction caused a suspected child predator who grabbed a child on an aircraft to walk free that day. They later, like I told you, I received information that they later identified the guy later on another day. But that day he walked free. Hopefully he didn't grope or molest any other kid. Sasha Larkin was the assistant sheriff. She's retired a couple of months ago. The assistant sheriff, when I broke the story of Sheriff Kevin McMahill's alleged affair with her. One detective said the analogy when they discuss Michael Gennaro was, quote, he knows where the bodies are buried, unquote. And apparently, according to them, Gennaro must have forgotten about all his past misdeeds, since now he's the captain of the Internal Affairs Bureau and is investigating cops. I hope to God not really where the bodies are buried, that's just using that analogy. But who knows what's been going on for years in this department. Now, like I said, Michael Gennaro was in criminal intelligence, and at some point in time, he got booted out of the criminal intelligence section. According to sources who spoke to me, Gennaro went to, I think he was deputy chief at the time. He's now retired. Guy's name was Rod Jett, G-E-T-T. And when he realized he's getting booted out of criminal intelligence, he went to Rod Jett and he told them that if they don't put him in the unit where he has a take-home car, he doesn't have to do calls for service, that, according to what I was told, Gennaro told Rod Jett if he didn't get a position like that, since he's getting booted out of criminal intelligence, that he was going to go to Action 13 News and tell them all the dirty stuff that was going on in the criminal intelligence section and within Metro. Michael Gennaro was then transferred into what's called the rope unit, which is called the repeat offender program, where they follow repeat offenders, try to catch them in the act, they do all that kind of stuff. And they couldn't figure out why to get booted out of criminal intelligence is pretty serious, and why this guy is now putting into another specialized unit when other people, cops wanted to get in there, because he threatened that he was going to unload on all the dirty stuff going on in Metro. And like I said, and he moved up to the rank to sergeant, lieutenant, and is now the captain in charge of internal affairs. The lieutenant who built the department had thousands of dollars in overtime because he was staying home, not going to work. I broke that story. That's another thing the department didn't let the public know about. This is coming from the Las Vegas Review-Journal article from 2002. And it says in a memo written in August 1995 by Captain Steve Franks, who investigated Clampett's allegations of sexual harassment, Franks said the entire series of events could be laid at Hood's feet. He's talking about Clampett's then sergeant on her squad, Gary Hood. And then they're quoting Franks. And it says, "It was his inaction that caused this feeling and mood to prevail, which set in motion the acceptable tolerance, which snowballed into a sustainable complaint against Officer Stoops." And then it says, wrote Franks, who is now a lieutenant. Then it says, later in the memo, Franks wrote, quote, "It is appalling this type of behavior ever occurred by officers on our department against another officer. It is also equally galling that, quote, common sense, unquote, did not prevail, and we had not a single officer with the moral courage to stand up to this behavior." Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Franks is referring to Jennifer Gale Clampett's male squad members. She was the only female on her squad in 1995. And when he talks about no single officer with moral courage that stood up and defended her, one of the people he's talking about is then Las Vegas Metro Police Officer Kevin McMahill, who's now running for Clark County Sheriff. He was one of the officers who stood by and thought the sexual harassment comments made by William Stoops on the squad directed against then police officer Jennifer Gale Clampett, who retired as a sergeant in 2008. He didn't do anything. And he is running for sheriff. And the body of the report says, this is against Gary Hood. It is alleged that on 3 separate incidents, you overheard officers on your squad make sexual remarks toward a female officer that constituted harassment and created a hostile work environment. These remarks were, quote, snail trails, quote, camel toes, and quote, cunt. You did not stop these remarks from occurring, counsel the officers on types of prohibited behavior, nor act to investigate a complaint brought to your attention. It is alleged that officers on your squad were causing disharmony explicitly directed toward a female officer, and you failed to act. While William Stoops was making those comments to her, snail trails, which was a comment about her sweating from the groin area, camel toes against the uniform that maybe showed the outline of a groin area, and cunt, which is a derogatory, everybody knows, it's a derogatory comment to a female, call him a cunt. And those comments were made by William Stoops while Kevin McMahill and his squad members laughed and thought it was funny, and nobody stood up, like I just read in that Steve Franks memo, and said, this is wrong, shut up. Nobody stood up, including Kevin McMahill, the man who wants to be sheriff of Clark County and the head of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And I exposed this also. So I'm going to get this up on the screen here. Okay, this is episode 96, March 2nd, 2022. And the title, Exposed, LVMPD Negligence, a Factor in Kidnapping/Rape of Boy by Sex Offender on House Arrest. Again, according to my sources, that 14-year-old boy should never have been raped because the sex offender that raped him, who was on house arrest, should have been picked up way before that because he violated his GPS ankle monitor boundaries, and the people who were monitoring that in the correction center, which is the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, part of the police department, didn't do the job. They weren't watching it. So that's what that one's about. So we have 2 kids in 3 years who were raped and kidnapped because of police negligence. Freaking disgrace. This was a major cover-up by Sheriff Joe Lombardo, who's now running for governor of Nevada. And everybody knows what I think of him. He's an incompetent, documented liar, and he's corrupt. He's covered things up, kept them from the press, kept them from the public. Sheriff Joe Lombardo is pissed off because I keep breaking these stories that police officers are leaking to me. Stories that he wanted never to see the light in the public domain. So, too bad, Joe Lombardo. The public has a right to know what's being concealed, but there was a convicted sex offender on house arrest wearing an ankle monitor, and the police personnel who was supposed to monitor, because you have certain boundaries, certain limits where you can go. You can't go out certain areas. Well, they were, for lack of a better word, sleeping on the job, and this guy violated his limits where he's supposed to move, and in doing so, one day, he, a little 14-year-old kid was going to school, a boy, and he kidnapped him and raped him because of police negligence. I'm going to play that one more time.
As our officers get up onto the stairwell, there's an L-shaped metal bracket that was used by the suspect to keep the officers from being able to open the fire escape door, which is where they would have entered in. So as they get that door breached, the shooting stops.
What you just saw, ladies and gentlemen, was a lie. What Kevin McMahill said at the time, he was undersheriff. You see on the screen here, I'll put it up over here, is in October 3rd of 2019, I published a story, or the Baltimore Post-Examiner published a story that I wrote, and it was titled, Las Vegas Metro Police Official Failed to Tell the Truth in Fox News Documentary on a Massacre. And that was Kevin McMahill, the excerpt that you just saw, being interviewed for the Fox documentary, and I believe it was called The Las Vegas Massacre, an investigative look into the deadliest mass shooting in American history. Kevin McMahill went on national television in that documentary and lied. Now, I heard he lied, this is what I was told, to make the department look good, that as soon as they got up into the stairwell, they popped the bracket off the door and the shooting stopped. Ladies and gentlemen, it was an all-out lie. The shooting stopped way before that. And what you have on the screen over here, and of course, this buffoon, McMahill, obviously didn't even read his department's, and was called the LVMPD Criminal Investigative Report of the 1 October mass casualty shooting. And ladies and gentlemen, you can see the date. That was made available to the public on August 3rd, 2018, well over a year before McMahill appeared on that documentary. Page on the right there, you can see it. It says 22, this is from page 37 of their report, 22:57 hours. That's 10:57 hours. Sergeant Bitsko and SWAT Officer Hancock manually breached the door barricaded with the L bracket. Okay? That's in that report that came out a year before you saw Kevin McMahill in that documentary. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody knows, okay, that the gunfire stopped, Paddock's gunfire stopped between 10:15 and 10:16 p.m. on October 1st, 2017. Okay, so when Kevin McMahill said on that documentary that when they popped the bracket on the door, the shooting had stopped, that was a 100% a lie. I want you to listen to this.
5 of the 6 years while I was the undersheriff, we went down in every measurable crime category.
That's Kevin McMahill again, talking to a crowd, fundraising, November of 21, and he's bragging about how the crime statistics under his leadership, because technically, and he says it too, and he ran the entire department. That's what the undersheriff does. He's involved in everything, all the decisions. He's taking pride that the violent crime statistics went down in 5 years when I was undersheriff. Ladies and gentlemen, he's corrupt, just like Sheriff Joe Lombardo. From November 14th of 2021. I broke this story. It's never been touched by the Las Vegas media. This was part 1. The title of this was Vegas Police Ordered to Downgrade Violent Crimes, Falsify Reports. I explained in that episode, while McMahill was on the department when this was occurring, okay, they were ordering police officers to downgrade the violent crimes of robbery and sexual assault to misdemeanor crimes. So if you have a strong arm robbery, which is a felony, you put down it was a petty larceny or something else, and you downgrade the sexual assaults for classification purposes. See, I had all these violent crimes of sexual assaults and rapes and robberies went down when it's total bullshit, okay? They were falsifying the reports. McMahill orchestrated this also with the police sources who spoke to me. He was complicit in this. And now, the lying dirtbag, documented liar, pervert, Kevin McMahill, is now using that at his campaign saying, well, 5 years I was undersheriff, some violent crimes went down. Okay? That is corruption, ladies and gentlemen. Again, that is purebred corruption. And one of the podcasts that I did, you heard the professor from John Jay College of Criminal Justice say that when these departments across the country, they get caught doing this is a major thing. This is corruption. They reported those statistics to the state of Nevada. This was the basis for my story. Look at the title. Vegas police ordered to downgrade violent crimes, falsify reports. One cop refused. Cop that refused was former robbery detective Eddie Lanieve, who back in 2007, I think it was involved with his partner in the investigation and arrest that led to O.J. Simpson's arrest, and he went to jail, went to prison. It was Eddie Lanieve and his partner that worked that investigation. He's got out of, he's getting ready to retire. He went to the airport, airport duty. A lot of these guys getting ready to retire. They put in for the airport duty. Eddie was going to lunch one day out of the airport. Somebody flagged him down and said they got robbed. It was a strong arm robbery. Instead of calling the unit in that area command, because that's the kind of cop Eddie is, he handled it himself. And then when he went back and he was doing the paperwork at the airport, after it was done, he was told by the sergeant, hey, come back in here and change and he said, no, I'm not changing it. It was a strong arm robbery is a felony in Nevada. Strong arm robbery is still a robbery. They wanted him to lower it to a petty larceny crime. He refused, got a lot of bullshit over it. And then what the sergeant did, Eddie was pulled into the lieutenant's office. He still refused not to do it, which was the correct thing, because this is a man of integrity. Eddie Lanieve, man of integrity, man of honor. So many emails I got when I broke the story from not only Frank Serpico from New York, but cops across the country said this man is a freaking hero, that he told them basically shove it. He's not changing his report. Okay, he didn't change the report. What happened was, according to my sources, is the sergeant and had another officer go into Eddie Lanieve's report and change it from the felony robbery, strong arm robbery, to downgrade it to a misdemeanor crime. Okay? And then I did a podcast a couple of podcasts back. You can go on and look at that. And it says, Joe Lombardo ordered deputy chief to harass cop who refused to falsify report. This is what's going on in the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. They get away with this stuff. There's no oversight with this police department, because the sheriff runs the police department. He's the highest law enforcement officer. You can't fire a sheriff. Episode 59, which I published on August 9th, 2021. And as you can see, the title of my podcast there is Las Vegas Massacre, FBI, LVMPD, MGMRI, which stands for MGM Resorts International, the owners of the Mandalay Bay, where Paddock fired out the window. New sniper attack posed a threat prior to 2017. Now, that podcast was an update to this story that I did back in 2018. The Baltimore Post-Examiner broke this story, and it's my story. I wrote it. That we broke it. Okay, like as we broke many stories relating to the massacre that nobody ever touched. And it was titled "FBI's Elite Hostage Rescue Team and the Las Vegas Police Trained for Similar Mass Shooting Scenario Years Before." Now, ladies and gentlemen, the photograph you see on that story, but that was just a photograph that the editor of the Baltimore Post-Examiner, which is based out of Maryland, found on the internet because it involved the hostage rescue team, I said in my story. So he just pulled a picture off in that picture. But take a look at that picture. Take a look at that helicopter, and there's two guys on each side, snipers, HRT, and that's from the hostage rescue team. That's an actual HRT helicopter from Quantico, Virginia. 2 months later, we broke another story, exclusive. MGM Resorts International executive knew that a sniper attack from a hotel high-rise posed a threat prior to the October 1st massacre. Now, remember the photograph on the Baltimore Post-Examiner? Now, last year, I uncovered a training film that was done by the FBI, the hostage rescue team. They did like a commercial for the HRT. And embedded in that training film was this 8-second clip that I keep looping here on the screen. But what do you see, ladies and gentlemen? That is the actual HRT helicopter that we had the photograph of when we did the story. We broke the story in 2018. But look where they're at. They're inside the old Sahara Hotel when it was being closed in 2011 for renovations. It was going to open up at the SLS Resort, and it did, and now it's back called the Sahara Hotel again. That's what's important here is that's the HRT helicopter, hostage rescue team, FBI, with 2 FBI HRT members, snipers, and what they're doing, they're shooting ammunition at targets, simulating an attack from an elevated position inside a hotel and hotel tower, and there's some targets around. You have to look at the whole video that I did. Why am I bringing it up? Because somebody brought up the other day that just saw it, some retired cop from not from Vegas, and said, that's freaking unbelievable. Why wasn't that on the front page of any news, even the national media? Because the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department with their SWAT team was there at that training scenario in 2011, and I also broke a confidential internal LVMPD memo that corroborated what my sources were telling me, and I broke the story because a high-ranking member of the LVMPD first gave me the information on this. And the point being is this, okay? That training took place in 2011. The first Route 91 Harvest Music Festival occurred in 2014. Then they had one in 2015. And they had one in 2016. And then we had the one in 2017 that led to the death of now 60 people, because 2 more died from their injuries, and the wounding of almost 500 people. And not at any one of those Route 91 Harvest Music Festivals, after being trained that a sniper attack was possible from a hotel high-rise tower, they had no counter snipers standing by ever, even during the Las Vegas Massacre. So when Joe Lombardo and Kevin McMahill talk about how great they did that night, they're full of crap, because I did a lot of stuff proving a lot of stuff that they should have had in place. They didn't have in place. And they did this big review afterwards. Oh, now we're going to, ladies and gentlemen, they didn't even have a mass casualty incident plan in place prior to the 2017 Las Vegas Massacre. And listen to this podcast, because it's unbelievable, the stuff that I show in here, documents from Homeland Security and the FBI, okay, that they didn't even have that plan in place, even though for years they knew that Las Vegas could be the subject of a terrorist or lone wolf type of attack. Anyway, it just so happens that sources, police sources, talk to me, okay? They're obviously not talking to any other journalists in Las Vegas, because none of these stories are being broken by other journalists from Las Vegas. I'm breaking these stories as an independent investigative journalist. So every time I do a story and break a story, Lombardo goes completely apeshit, for lack of a better words, and starts threatening people. When cops leak information to me, police sources, okay, he gets upset. Just like he went berserk, I heard when I broke that story last year about the cover-up of the 12-year-old girl who was raped in 2019 because of police incompetence from the detectives in the sexual assault in that case, because the suspect should have been arrested in 2018 after he attacked and kidnapped and raped an 11-year-old girl. I broke, that's a 3-part story, 3 separate podcasts. I broke that story, and he goes crazy, just like all these other stories. The lieutenant who didn't come to work and built the department out of thousands of dollars in money because he just decided he was going to stay home. And I broke that story. And the falsification of the police reports. It just goes on and on and on. The police then released a composite sketch of the suspect as described by the 11-year-old female victim. After the composite sketch was released, some of the officers of the Las Vegas Metro Police Department assigned to the Airport Bureau at McCarran International Airport were shocked. After seeing the composite sketch and the video of the suspect's vehicle, they recognized that an airport maintenance employee, Antoine Perkins, fit the suspect's description, and he also drove a similar vehicle. Airport Bureau police, thinking that they had just solved the kidnapping and rape of the 11-year-old girl, then notified the Las Vegas Metro Police Sexual Assault Detail. Sexual Assault Detail detectives responded to McCarran Airport and interviewed Antoine Perkins, who gave detectives an alibi concerning his whereabouts at the time of the kidnapping and rape. Now, listen to this closely. The alibi Perkins gave to the detectives was bogus. The detectives never did their due diligence. They believed what Perkins told them, and then the detectives told the Airport Bureau officers that Perkins was not the suspect. Think about this for a minute. The police failed to do their job in May 2018 after the first kidnapping and rape of a child. The police did nothing. Not in May 2018, June 2018, July 2018, August 2018, September 2018, October 2018, November 2018, December 2018. Not a damn thing all those 7 months. Now we are into January of 2019. And on the 24th day of that month, a little 12-year-old girl walking to school was kidnapped and raped by Antoine Perkins, the highest law enforcement officer in Clark County, Nevada. Sheriff Joe Lombardo made sure that this travesty would never be known to the public. But now it is. If what I just described to you is not bad enough, and believe me, it is terrible beyond imagination, to add insult to injury, what happened after the second kidnapping and rape in January of 2019 is off the charts. And once again, Sheriff Joe Lombardo made sure that the public would not even hear about it. The kidnapping and rape of the 12-year-old girl occurred during the morning hours of Thursday, January 24, 2019, while the victim was walking to school. The following day, Friday, January 25, 2019, and please refer to the screenshots in this podcast, Las Vegas Metro Police released a press release stating that detectives quickly identified a person of interest in this case as 35-year-old Antoine Perkins, and that the black dually pickup was located at Perkins' place of employment. A photo of Perkins accompanies this release. Anyone with any information on the whereabouts of Antoine Perkins is urged to immediately call 911. The photo the police released with that press release was the McCarran Airport identification photo of Antoine Perkins. They said that Perkins' dually pickup truck was located at his place of employment. You will hear from me shortly why his truck was at his place of employment after his arrest. On January 26, 2019, Saturday, the police issued an updated press release stating that the suspect, Antoine Perkins, had been arrested. Back in 2019, the Las Vegas media did report on the barricaded suspect incident that resulted in a full SWAT team call-out that cost tens of thousands of dollars in overtime pay and which resulted in the arrest of Antoine Perkins. What was not reported until now on my podcast is that there was another Sheriff Joe Lombardo cover-up in this case. There should never have been a barricaded incident and a SWAT team call-out to effect the arrest of Antoine Perkins. Once again, that happened because of incompetence of the sexual assault sergeant Beth Carroll, the same sergeant who had been involved in the Perkins case going back to May 2018 when they botched that investigation. Again, according to Las Vegas Metro Police personnel who spoke to me, on Thursday after the second kidnapping rape, they zeroed in on Antoine Perkins as the suspect. This is what was never reported on because, like I said, Lombardo orchestrated a cover-up on this entire fiasco, starting with the botched May 2018 kidnapping rape investigation. On Thursday evening, January 24, 2019, the same day that Perkins did the rape earlier in the day, he was working at the airport. Sexual assault detail detective Sergeant Beth Carroll made telephone contact with the sergeant at the Airport Bureau and informed him that they were coming out to arrest Perkins. The Airport Bureau sergeant, who was a veteran police officer with 30 years of experience, told Sergeant Carroll that they would lure Perkins into the office under a ruse that the toilet was backed up, and then arrest him and hold him until Sergeant Carroll came out with her detectives. Sergeant Carroll said no, that she wanted to do a high-profile takedown arrest and for the airport sergeant to stand down, not to pick up Perkins until she got to the airport with her squad. A very long story short, after Sergeant Carroll arrived, they attempted to make the arrest of Perkins. However, he saw them coming at him, jumped into a McCarran Airport maintenance vehicle, and fled the airport. They lost him. This was Thursday night, January 24, 2019. For over 24 hours, a dangerous felon, child molester, rapist, who had already attacked 2 children, was once again back in the Las Vegas community because of police incompetence. Had Sergeant Beth Carroll allowed the airport police to do what they wanted and get Perkins immediately Thursday evening, this fiasco at the airport would never have happened and Perkins would not have escaped. Lombardo could not allow this to get out into the public domain. So that's when damage control and the cover-up started, right after the second kidnapping/rape, then the botched arrest attempt at the airport. The cover-up initiated by Sheriff Lombardo through his undersheriff, who at the time was Kevin McMahill, down the chain of command from assistant sheriffs, deputy chiefs, captains, ending up with the Public Information Office. That is why all this remained secret from the public eye for over 2 years, until Truth and Consequences with Doug Poppa uncovered the cover-up. I was told that the Airport Bureau cops were not only livid and furious, but brokenhearted when they found out after the second kidnapping rape that Antoine Perkins was indeed the perpetrator of the first crime back in May 2018, when they identified him to the sexual assault detail detectives. The high-ranking member of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department who made a statement to cops that Kevin McMahill was afraid, he was fearful of protest from women's rights groups because of the incident in 1995 with Carrie Lance. So he wanted to sell his house and buy one in the gated community. And as I just showed here, that in fact did indeed happen. The current high-ranking member of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department who made that statement to cops is now Undersheriff Andrew Walsh. Andrew Walsh was assistant sheriff. He was promoted by Kevin McMahill as his number 2 undersheriff. At the time this statement was made, I believe it was made in 2021. Undersheriff Andrew Walsh was assistant sheriff. Okay, the statement was made at a retirement party for Las Vegas Metro Police Sergeant Brett Whitmarsh, and he retired. They had a retirement party, and at this retirement party, I was told from my sources, Andrew Walsh made the statement that Kevin was afraid there was going to be protest in front of his home, either when he was running for sheriff or if he indeed got elected. And he did get elected. He is the sheriff of Clark County, Nevada, and as such, he runs the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We know, based on what I reported, he's a documented liar. We know that incident happened. We have 2 witnesses. We have the victim, still alive to this day, Carrie Lance, and the retired police sergeant, Jennifer Clampett. She's the one that originally made the complaint to Internal Affairs on the conduct of McMahill and Stoops back in 1995. Kevin McMahill and William Stoops did not report this.
In 1995, and they brought me to their cars. They ran my name and found out that I had priors for loitering with intent of prostitution. And so from there, their whole tone changed, and they asked me to come over to their car and lift my skirt and spread them open and show them my private parts. And then they searched my purse in the front of the car, and they found a little small amount of cocaine, some crack. They said that if you want to go, you'll have to eat this. So I said, okay, and I ate it up. They just were laughing and just saying all these crude remarks and just not treating me like a human being, and it was very upsetting. I was in jail for another time, and Internal Affairs, I guess it was Internal Affairs, came in and got me out of the cell and questioned me about the incident and said that Clampett had come forward and said that she witnessed this. I called a lawyer and decided to have a lawsuit against them. And I had to move around at that time because I was scared for my life, or something of danger that I could be harmed for doing this. I did settle with the police. So I was told that they would both be fired, but I hear that only one was. It was Officer McMahill and not officer. I refused to call him officer. Sorry about that. It was McMahill, Stoops, who were both there doing those things to me. McMahill was the one with the worst attitude.
This man is the head of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and for everything that I have right now, there's nothing that leads me to believe that this incident didn't happen. Now, this incident in 1995 basically just died. It was brought back into the public light. Ramsey Dennison in 2017, who's the documentary filmmaker, he made two documentary films on the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Ramsey Dennison is the person who broke this story in modern times. He talked about it in the first documentary, and he did some small video clip shorts on it. And because of what he did, I started doing my own research, talking to sources, and obtaining documents.
Probably wouldn't promote a guy who appeared in the newspaper for allegedly beating his wife to assistant sheriff, but Joe Lombardo did when he gave Charles Hank a promotion recently. Even though Hank appeared in the Las Vegas Review-Journal for allegedly beating his wife, I talked to his now ex-wife, Maria, and she described the incident to me with tears in her eyes, and also talked about how Hank intimidated her into recanting her statement. Joe Lombardo's other right-hand man is Kevin Vagina Man McMahill. Early in his career, he was part of a squad that told a woman they found drugs on that they'd let her off if she showed them her vagina.
A lot of people know that former Undersheriff Kevin McMahill is campaigning to be the next sheriff of the LVMPD, but what far fewer people know is that at one point in his career, Jennifer Clampett, another LVMPD officer who witnessed the whole thing, Kevin McMahill asked the woman to show them her vagina. She did. And that wasn't enough for him, though, because they wouldn't let her go until she actually ate crack cocaine. And there was a $4,900 payout to this woman, Carrie Lance. Now, if you want a sheriff who's a bully, if you want a sheriff who's a punk, if you want a sheriff who's a sexual harassing deviant, then vote for Kevin McMahill. And you can help keep corruption alive in the LVMPD.
Now, when McMahill said to the Journal last year, well, it didn't happen because I was promoted. I moved up the ladder. But ladies and gentlemen, that is a bunch of BS, that remark, because there's people who moved up the ladder and got promoted within the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department in high rank who are documented liars, alleged wife beaters, drunks, and all the kinds of misconduct over the decades that happened. So that's neither here nor there. He went to a pre-termination hearing, and he did not get fired. Sources have spoken to me, said then Sheriff Jerry Keller saved his job. He was not fired for that conduct. And everything we know right now, and that's my opinion of what I call him, he is, as far as I'm concerned, he is a documented pervert and documented a liar. And there's two women alive today that were part of that incident. The Internal Affairs Bureau investigation from 1995, Sergeant Tavares said, in that document that I posted, he said that Carrie Lance confirmed what happened as it was reported by Jennifer Clampett. That was in 1995. And both of these ladies are still alive. Just because somebody is a prostitute or a criminal, you don't abuse your authority as a police officer. Okay, you don't take advantage of somebody just because they're a prostitute or a criminal. Okay, you don't disgrace the badge. And from everything we know at this point, Kevin McMahill disgraced his badge. And he is a documented liar and a documented pervert. And he's a documented liar on other stuff that I reported over the years. What this shows, ladies and gentlemen, is a pattern of misconduct, piss-poor leadership, serious corruption, cover-ups to protect people on the department of high rank, including the sheriffs themselves that engaged in this conduct. I explained about a domestic violence incident that occurred at Gillespie's house. I believe it was in 2009. In 2010, when Sheriff Doug Gillespie was running for re-election, he was supposed to have a debate with a female police officer named Lori Bish, who was also running for sheriff. He didn't show up the night of the debate, but a YouTube video was posted. Listen to this, folks. Very interesting.
question. This question is a hypothetical. What the most important thing for a candidate for sheriff is the character trait of integrity. That's the most important thing. Also, I think critical thinking is an important character trait. So I'd like to ask you a hypothetical. How would you handle this situation as sheriff of Clark County? Now, it's come to your attention that one of the Metro employees had an inappropriate relationship with a female police officer, which was a subordinate to that person. And it developed into a domestic violence event at that person's residence, where when 2 Metro police officers responded, based on their investigation that an act of domestic violence had occurred, they attempted to make an arrest. But this employee, they were not successful because the employee said he was of such high rank that they did not have the authority to make the arrest. In other words, that this person was above the law. Now, additionally, the event number that was assigned to that event was deleted, mysteriously disappeared. And lastly, the female subordinate involved, or in question, was promoted. Now, this came to your attention. How would you address that situation?
That isn't a hypothetical story. That's an absolute true story. And I think those of us who know that's a true story. And I won't mention any names, but I can tell you right now, per NRS, there's only 3 people who can arrest the sheriff. And that is the coroner, the district attorney, and Catherine Cortez Masto, the attorney general. That is, when we talk about transparency, and we talk about being open, and we talk about being honest with the public that we're here to serve, that is a call that did come out of the sheriff's house. And the event was changed. It was changed from an original domestic violence call, and 6 hours later, it was reported as a burglary alarm. Where's the integrity? Where's the integrity for everybody who responded to that call? It wasn't 1 person. It wasn't 2 people. It was a lot of people. And if it wasn't a domestic violence call, then why in the world did the domestic violence lieutenant get called out on his day off to show up? I'm just using a little bit of common sense here. We had another situation, 2 weeks ago, where a high-ranking person was involved in a domestic violence at his house. If that was anybody of, a regular police officer, civilian, even sergeants or lieutenants, we would have been booked in jail, and so would anybody else in this room. The fact that special favors were given is not acceptable.
Very disturbing. Now, what Lori Bish said was 100% true. I wrote 2 stories for the Baltimore Post-Examiner and titled, "Was a Nevada Sheriff Above the Law?" I talked to police sources who confirmed this incident happened, okay? Just as Jerry Keller's domestic violence complaint over his house was covered up when he was sheriff back in the 90s. What Lori Bish said was confirmed to me by multiple police sources. I wrote a second story, this one. Las Vegas cover-up allegations surface involving another incident. Now, here's an excerpt from that story. I'll put into context what I'm going to talk about here in a second. One current member of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department who spoke to the Baltimore Post-Examiner under the condition of anonymity recently confirmed what Lori Bish had said. The officer claimed several high-ranking officers, including deputy chiefs, were involved in this incident. The officer said employees were threatened and remained silent in fear of losing their jobs. The original event number was deleted from the 9/11 Communications Center computers, and along with it, all the information relating to the original call, the officer said. Another event number was generated for a fictitious call of an alarm at the sheriff's home, the officer said, the one who was talking to me at the time. This officer said alleged domestic violence call was replaced with the bogus incident. There's another thing that proves what people were telling me over the years and what I've been talking about with these cover-ups, the corruption and the misconduct, because that's exactly what this is. This was, ladies and gentlemen, pure corruption. Ray Flynn, at the time this happened, was in charge of the 9/11 Communications Center. Okay? I received information from sources within the Las Vegas Metro Police Department when I wrote those stories that Ray Flynn was the one who was involved and pretty much threatened people dispatchers who were working that night. And the event number, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, just like I said in that little excerpt I just read from what the cop told me, okay? The event number in the computer-aided dispatch system was deleted, which was the original domestic violence call at the sheriff's home in the northwest part of the Las Vegas Valley. A lot of people were there, just like Lori Bish said. Higher-ups, police officers responded, and what happened was the event number was deleted out of the 9/11 computer-aided dispatch system, okay? They destroyed evidence. Then what they did is they issued another event number and made it look like there was an alarm going off at the sheriff's house to cover the officers and everybody that went there, okay? Is destruction of evidence, police records. This was a major cover-up. Sources just told me just the other day that the night after, at roll call the next day, let me put it that way, after the incident happened at Sheriff Gillespie's house, Assistant Sheriff Ted Moody, he went to the roll call briefing at the Northwest Area Command and told police officers, you were never there last night. Didn't happen. In essence, I'm taking out of context what they said, because the sheriff wasn't there because he was out of town. And of course, you're basically threatening the people. You keep your mouth shut and happen. Now, people say, how can something like this happen? Because, ladies and gentlemen, from talking to police sources for years, these things happen consistently because they get away with it. So I wanted to bring that up because I've been talking about on podcast domestic violence, and you heard Lori Bish say, and she said there was another high-ranking official who his domestic violence was covered up. So, you know, this is what's going on the police department, ladies and gentlemen, out here for years. FBI agent, special agent from the Las Vegas division of the FBI office, who we were talking about other stuff, and this thing with Gillespie came up in discussion, and he told me, can you get one or both of those event numbers? In 2011, a police source gave me one of the event numbers, and I turned it over to the FBI special agent. What happened with the Gillespie incident, ladies and gentlemen, is 100% full-blown corruption. And higher-ups, they were all aware of this, and in one form or another, they were all involved in that cover-up. Episode 131 for Sunday, December 11th, 2022. I'm Doug Poppa, independent investigative journalist, former law enforcement officer. This is another exclusive investigative news story. According to police sources, a Las Vegas Metro police sergeant is under Internal Affairs Bureau investigation after ordering his officers to stand down and wait for the arrival of SWAT as the officers heard the screams of a woman who was being stabbed to death. It sounds horrible, folks, because it is. I will report what was not reported by the Las Vegas Metro Police to the press and the public. Again, folks, this is exclusive information you will hear first on the Truth and Consequences podcast. According to police sources, Las Vegas Metro Police Southeast Area Command Sergeant Danny Cordero ordered his squad to stand down and not enter the apartment because the SWAT team was en route. Prior to the SWAT team's arrival, the suspect, Bonilla, exited and surrendered to the police. The same officers, ladies and gentlemen, who wanted to make entry into the apartment to save the woman's life are the officers who discovered her body inside the apartment when they made entry after Bonilla surrendered. After the September 14th incident, which was also never reported to the news, Southeast Area Command Bureau Commander Captain Christine Buist, Captain Buist, wrote a statement of complaint against Sergeant Cordero for failing to take action to save the woman's life. Why? I was told that the incident should have changed immediately from a, quote, barricaded/hostage event to a rescue attempt as soon as the police officers heard the woman screaming, and Sergeant Cordero failed to do that and ordered his officers to stand down. What I just described was never divulged to the public until now, here on my podcast. And how many times in stories I wrote for the Baltimore Post-Examiner or on my podcast have I said, under Joe Lombardo and other sheriffs, supervisors get away with a lot of stuff, and people at the bottom get burned, okay, for things that supervisors get away with. The Las Vegas Metro Police Department, I said this in multiple podcasts, has a problem over the years with integrity, code of conduct from the top on down. Remember, we had 2 former sheriffs who were married who had affairs with female subordinates. We had another former sheriff who was a notorious drunk, and he had a little sexual encounter with a female at a casino in an elevator. I heard it was oral sex, but the freaking idiot didn't realize there was a camera in there. Kevin McMahill, like I said, is the sheriff-elect of Clark County. He will take office in January 2023, and he's a documented liar and a documented pervert. Neither him nor Sheriff Lombardo have brought forward any evidence to the contrary that I talked about in 5 podcasts on this McMahill incident and the documents that I produced. That's what it is. Make your own opinion. This is the kind of BS that goes on in the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And what I heard is that when Kevin McMahill takes office in January, Sasha Larkin will be promoted from the rank of deputy chief to the rank of assistant sheriff. That's the rumor, people close to McMahill. And I also heard the other day that assistant sheriff Andrew Walsh, they call him Andrew Walsh, is on McMahill's short list to be the next undersheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. You know, this police department's a freaking mess. I said it a long time ago. Cops have told me, it's worse than Peyton Place. I know a lot of young people don't know what that is, the soap opera back in the 60s, and everybody was fooling around with everybody, wives, husbands, and so they say, it's like a Peyton Place, the police department. And I said in one of the podcasts a couple of months back that some of the cops say, Joseph Wambaugh's choir boys got nothing on some of the cops at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, including supervisors. And so that's what they say. The LVMPD is worse with some of the people. Yeah, I was told that another area command captain last year came under scrutiny because he was having an affair with a female civilian employee of the police department who was a director. And he's now divorced. So, this nonsense has been going on for years. And I said a long time ago, you got this nepotism also is a major problem here with this police department. And once you break the trust of your spouse, and this is the way I believe my entire life. I never fooled around on my wife. I've never fooled around on any woman that I've been out with. You don't have to be married. It's an honor thing. It's a trust thing. Once you break trust, to me, it's done. It's over with. Goodbye and have a nice day. But to screw around on your spouse, the person you go home to every night, you're fooling around with somebody else, okay? I never prescribe to that, but people do what they want to do. Years ago, and cops have told me this over the years, and there was a now retired lieutenant, and you know what his thing was, ladies and gentlemen? He used to hide in the bedroom closet of his house while other cops came over and had sex with his wife. It's freaking disgusting as far as I'm concerned, but you can go back, I can go back 20 years and tell you stories of things that police officers have told me because I've been out here for 20-something years, but it just goes to show, the code of conduct, the morality, and everybody does their own, everybody's responsible for their own actions. But when you have people at the top commanding an agency, and they're married, and they're screwing around with female subordinates, and they're drunks, and, doing all this crazy stuff, how do you think that filters down to the people at the bottom? And then when these cops at the bottom see people in management getting away with things that they would be fired for, and they're still on the department, the LVMPD has some major problems. As 2 retired cops told me the other day, nothing's going to change come January, because you look at the integrity and the morals of Kevin McMahill. So nothing's going to change in this police department, and that's what the cops say. You know, it is what it is, and some of these things are just, you know, it's just disturbing to me. You know, I was a cop. I lost my job as a cop because of corrupt sheriff and captains and deputy chief, under sheriff that all had to protect their own ass at my expense. So that's why I do what I do here. I give a voice to the cops here, and then on some of the departments over the years that I've talked about that don't, you know, they want to say stuff, get off their chest, but they can't. Because if they come out publicly and say something, you know, they end up losing their job, or they sick the criminal intelligence unit on them, and I'm going to be talking about that in the future also, because those guys did some horrendous stuff over the years from what I've been told. They work directly, they take their orders directly from the sheriff, and you got Sheriff Lombardo running for governor. You want this guy as governor? Vote for him. I'm not. He is a documented liar, he's corrupt, and he's freaking incompetent. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, of the podcast, all this nonsense going on in this police department, all these allegations of, you know, people screwing around with everybody else's spouses and drinking and all this type of stuff. And then you wonder why that on the night of October 1st, 2017, a lot of things went wrong. Sheriff Lombardo even says that in his own after-action report. He even said, we didn't have a mass casualty incident plan in place. Some supervisors didn't know what was expected of them. Police officers told me, and I wrote stories on it, they had to run 2 blocks to get their rifles out of their car because Lombardo didn't like the idea of cops. They changed it now. He had no choice because of the massacre, but before the massacre, the night of the massacre, he doesn't like the public image of cops carrying, you know, AR-15 platform rifles, and that's since changed because of what happened on October 1st. But, you know, this is the nonsense that goes on. And then you got to wonder why all the stuff that they should have had in place the night of October 1st, 2017, it was not in place. Because, you know, it's like a circus, you know, with the management up there. Not everybody. There's a few good ones at the top. But McMahill, no, in my opinion. Lombardo, no, in my opinion.
If I wouldn't do it all over again, I would take the badge and I would leave it on somebody's desk and get out of police work.
One man who confronted truth and consequences.